at you at a weekend full of football. Marquee fixture this past weekend was that Manchester City Arsenal game. We kicked off our podcast on the back of that reverse fixture earlier in the season, and that was a special game, incredibly combative, competitive game. At the time, they were the two title hopefuls, the front runners, so to speak, and it was an intense game. And we saw on this leg of that exchange, it was also a very tense game, very feisty. There's a rivalry brewing, right? City coming into the game off of a very good performance against Chelsea. Arsenal looking to really make up ground in the table against Liverpool, who were able to pass a difficult hurdle, winning away at Bournemouth. City starting with John Stones at the back, being reintroduced to the squad. I guess the second game now, back in the mix. Started with one of their new signings, Marmoush. A bit of adjusted midfield. I think Marmoush was playing more centrally at first. And Arsenal started the game very, very brightly out of the blocks, very quickly, pressing really high up the field. Were able to stun City with an early goal, courtesy of Martin Odegaard. Assist from Kai Havertz. City playing around at the back. John Stones looking a little bit rusty, maybe not quite sharp enough, and let Arsenal in early. Teams traded blows back and forth a little bit. City started to go into the game towards the latter stages of the first half. And, I started to feel the momentum shift as an Arsenal fan. I've been critical of Arsenal not putting games away when they've taken the lead. And it felt like another one of those moments, particularly in the second half when City equalized. Haaland, who had very little involvement in the first half, was up for the game. Him and Gabriel have, heated exchanges. And he was able to get on the score sheet and looked very clinical in that finish. He was starved of service, but when it did come, he was deadly. Arsenal were awoke from their slumber after that equalizer and sprung into life. Got the lead very quickly thereafter, and then just were able to overrun City and City in the latter stages again. Couldn't keep up, just had no energy, no vigor to keep up with Arsenal. And yeah, we saw a standout performance it was a stand-up team performance. I think everyone really contributed. Raya with some really impressive saves. So defense, Lewis-Skelly had an incredible performance. He's a player that is really growing in stature in every appearance. He's making a name for himself in every appearance. Got his debut goal, showed a little bit of that personality as well, mocking Haaland with that celebration. So a player who, a lot of character, not overwhelmed by big occasions. At such a young age, to really give him a lot of credit. Ranieri coming in, almost Salah-esque finish. So great performance all around. Declan Rice, who you were a little bit critical of last week. You see him when he's back in that midfield with Odegaard and Partey. That's the strongest midfield Arsenal have. And he shines. He got 2 assists, actually got the man of the match. So great performance from Arsenal. City, I don't know what your thoughts were on City in this game.
Well, we were thinking in our last episode, City truly returning to form, and we were talking about how difficult their fixture run is, and that we would find out a lot about them, just like we said about Nottingham Forest. And it only took one fixture for us to come to a conclusion. They're not returning to form. I think the way they were beaten by Arsenal shows that City are just not at that top level where they can contend for the title. And it makes me wonder about their top 4 prospects as well. When I saw towards the end of the game, the Emirates crowd yelling "Ole" after pass after pass, a team's getting embarrassed when that happens. And that's very shocking to see that happen to Manchester City, or maybe it shouldn't be so shocking based on what we've seen, but we just saw a team that didn't have the power, didn't have the impetus to move forward, couldn't handle the press. And what we know about City is that, they're adamant about playing a certain way, passing out of the back, controlling the game. And we saw Arsenal's high press completely rattle them. I just thought the high press was a stroke of genius from Arteta. Not only the idea, but the execution, right? The commitment of the players from Arsenal to press in unison, to press with full vigor, full passion, to really tire themselves out, to give everything. Just rattled City, and they couldn't respond. And we don't see City as a team that can go to the bench when things aren't working out and bring on players who can come in and change the game. We saw De Bruyne on the bench, didn't come in until the 70th minute. Gundogan didn't even play. Grealish doesn't expect to play anymore. Foden wasn't able to affect the game. I just saw the midfield really as being the real example of the gulf. I don't want to say quality, but really it was an outclassing of Manchester City by Arsenal. We don't really say that about teams when they play against Manchester City. A team being of materially higher quality is what I saw from Arsenal. Hats off to them. I agree with Miles Lewis-Skelly, a player who's come into the team, taken his spot. He's taken Calafiori's spot. I know Calafiori was injured. Zinchenko was injured as well. But when they're fit, they're not playing. They were both on the bench. So for him to come in and play the way he did and the way he's been playing, it's very commendable. And the one thing I want to highlight about Miles Lewis-Skelly, it's the mentality, but also the power with which he plays. He plays physically. He gets into battles with Holland. He physically battles players at an 18 years old to have the strength of a man who's 24, 25, 27 years old. That is a very unique quality. And I think that's what really separates Miles Lewis-Skelly from some of the other young players that we see breaking into teams at a young age. With that being said, though, Arsenal, they're still several points behind. They're 6 points behind. Liverpool still has a game in hand, playing against Everton on the road. Everton, with a bit of a resurgence under David Moyes, playing at home in the derby coming up. So maybe there's a chance for Liverpool to drop points. But really, Arsenal don't have control of their own destiny. So while they're doing well, while they should be commended, still a big mountain to climb going forward.
There are a couple of fixtures coming up for Liverpool. Some tricky fixtures coming up. Newcastle and also Man City. So I think the next couple of weeks for Liverpool are going to be telling, but looking very good for them. They have to feel quite comfortable at the moment. Of course, they got to look over their shoulders a little bit and just watch where Arsenal are. But Liverpool have to feel comfortable right now. Just want to talk a little bit about Arsenal in terms of the transfer window, because this is the transfer deadline day, and Arsenal has stuttered a little bit in terms of their activity. Linked with a few players, a few strikers. They were linked with Cunha, weren't able to get the deal done for that. We're linked with Sesko, that also didn't pan out. And as an Arsenal fan, I'm a little bit disappointed in how they've approached the transfer window. Actually, the last two transfer windows, and being linked with Ollie Watkins, I don't know. I'm not enthralled with that option. Yes, of course, we know Ollie Watkins is a great striker, Premier League ready, battle tested. He's 29, and to get him at this stage of the season, Aston Villa are not going to let him go on the cheap, particularly as they just let John Duran go to Saudi. I know they've brought in Rashford loan, but yeah, he's their main guy. So if they're going to let him go to a rival, I don't think that's going to come cheap. And I think Arsenal could use those resources in a fashion that suits them for the long term, rather than just a quick fix. And yeah, so I wouldn't be opposed to it happening, but it would be an unrestrained celebration to have Ollie Watkins on the squad at this juncture. I don't think he's the best option. So I hope there's some other activity that we're just not aware of. The clock is ticking, so let's see what happens. But I feel if they don't get the striker, it shows a real lack of ambition from my perspective.
Well, we know with the January transfer window, it's incredibly difficult to make moves because it's just a short period. I honestly think, given where Arsenal is, right, finishing second 2 years in a row, they're just looking for the cherry on top of the sundae, if you will. They're looking for just one player to complement a very good recipe that's already there. And Ollie Watkins fills that gap that they have in the number 9 spot very, very well. And even if it's not a long-term signing, I think it's a great move for them if they were able to pull it off. He can come into the team, give them that regular goal-scoring threat, that ability to finish those one-on-one chances that sometimes Havertz finishes, sometimes he doesn't. You would have more consistency there from Ollie Watkins. But reality is, with Duran moving on, that Watkins deal is probably dead. So what that means for Arsenal is that they're unlikely to fill the void unless something that hasn't been bubbling in the market that we don't know about all of a sudden becomes a reality. And that's kind of what happened with Raheem Sterling at the beginning of the season, but we can look at that deal and say that was a mistake.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out, and that's my point. Is that the way they've gone about their transfer business seemed like they didn't really have a plan, right? I mean, you see City, they're decisive when they need a player. They go out as early as possible, get the deal done. You know, they brought in 3 players in this transfer window, right?
Right.
We see other clubs who are able to go after players, get the signature. With Arsenal, it's always such a labored process, and they end up leaving it always until the last day of the transfer window, and then having to settle on occasions for players who they didn't identify as the player that they want. So I'm a little bit disappointed, as I said, but we'll see what happens. Let's talk about your squad, because I know there's also some transfer activity. Let's talk just a little bit about the game, because we saw them play Crystal Palace, and the thing of note was that Amorim chose to start his 2 strikers on the bench, right, and play with a fluid offensive line with Kobe Mainoo as a false 9. I don't know where that idea came from, but it's
sorry, but the only thing I can think of is where he got that idea from. It makes me think of when Cesc Fabregas played as a false 9 for
Barca.
Really for the national team more so, and for Barca. But
yeah, he played for
when
Barca,
they won the World Cup.
Yeah.
And he was more of a fluid player who connected passes, and maybe he's thinking that Mainoo could do something like that. Obviously, not the best idea.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't work out in the game. And on top of that, we know that they've now let Marcus Rashford go on loan to Aston Villa. So it looks like the offensive options for Manchester United are getting thinner by the day. And you have to wonder, what is the strategy?
Yeah, I think we're all wondering what's going on. Coming into this season, we thought we would see a renewed vigor from the front office making power moves. And it appeared like they were making some moves with some signings over the summer. De Ligt, Mazraoui, Xerxes, who's not working out right now. But it appeared that the front office, they were trying to move in the right direction. But I believe the club have hit a bit of a rut where there's this uncertainty around where are we going? And it's mainly due to Ruben Amorim and his poor performance as a manager thus far. The team has not taken to his style of play, his way of managing. I don't think he has belief from the players in the changing room, and that might be bleeding into the transfer activity or lack thereof. You have men in the boardroom sitting there thinking, are we keeping Amorim or are we not? And should we support him in the market or should we not? We know that Ruben Amorim plays with a back 3, plays with wing backs. So Manchester United, they have gone and supported him in one way, and they brought in Patrick Dorgu, who is, from what I understand, in more of an attacking, offensive left wing back, to come in and take that role from Diogo Dalot, who has been deputizing for most of the season. He's a right-footed player playing on the left, not comfortable there. So the hope is that he can come into the team, allow Dalot to play on the right. And given that Lisandro Martinez just went down with what looks like a serious injury in the game against Crystal Palace, we'll probably see Mazraoui moved into the back 3 with De Ligt and Harry Maguire going forward. So Dorgu couldn't have come at a better time, but now there's no one to come off the bench once again other than Lenny Euro, who's still bedding in and learning how to play in the Premier League. So Manchester United look very, very thin. Once you let Rashford go and you know that he's no longer part of the plans, what is the plan to replace him? Doesn't appear that one is in place. When you think about the prospects for Manchester United not having any offensive options, just think if they have one injury to one player, whether that's Garnacho, Ahmad, Fernandez, this could be a team that can go lower in the table, currently sitting somewhere around 13th or 14th. We can see them having a worse second half of the season than they had in the first half of the season, given what's happening in the transfer window. So dark days ahead for Manchester United. That's a wrap, Premier Bros. Thanks for joining. Please subscribe if you liked what you saw, and come back and watch us next week.